U.S. President Donald Trump is preparing to issue more than 100 pardons and commutations on Tuesday, his last full day in office. The list of clemencies reportedly will not include Trump himself. Meanwhile, U.S. police have arrested an elected official on charges relating to the January 6th storming of the Capitol. Coy Griffin, a New Mexico County commissioner and founder of the group called Cowboys for Trump, was also planning to travel to Washington, D.C., armed with a rifle and a revolver to protest Joe Biden's inauguration on Wednesday. Now, security across the country has been stepped up since the weekend in anticipation of fresh violence by right-wing extremists.
The calm after the storm. Ahead of Joe Biden's inauguration Wednesday, the level of security in Washington is unprecedented. After the attack on the Capitol on January 6th, there is a fear of further unrest. Not just here, but across the United States.
Let's all understand that there's a perceived or a real success of the January 6th attack. So these organizations are now emboldened by setting up, and if you will, deterring future events because of the presence of law enforcement and military. That's sending a message to people. And I'm reading as recent as today that many of these organizations have decided that they're going to stand down.
The investigation into the siege of the Capitol is posing uncomfortable questions. Why was it so easy for the rioters to breach both the west and the east side of the building? New video evidence of the storming emerges daily. It's now clear that dozens of the rioters were listed in the FBI's database as potential terrorists. And Democrats are asking if the rioters had inside help from Republican officials.
Those members of Congress who had groups coming through the Capitol that I saw on January 5th, a reconnaissance for the next day, those members of Congress that incited this violent crowd.
Do individual Republican officials have links to radical groups? And if so, how extensive are they? Investigators are ruling nothing out. Security inside the Capitol has been stepped up, with lawmakers now required to submit to metal detector scans. Several hundred arrests have been made across the country in connection with the storming of the Capitol. This man was detained in Nashville, Tennessee on Sunday. Experts believe there are now tens of thousands of far-right militants in the United States who could be mobilized by radical organizations.
It's going to be a constant challenge as we deal with them because they've been radicalized. And the numbers have grown, obviously, over the term of this last administration. And we're hoping now that we can return to some sense of normalcy, that these agencies can be restored, and the guardrails that were in place for our Constitution can be put back in place.
For now, the Capitol is secure. The stage for the inauguration is set. Thousands of National Guard troops are on standby. They will all be hoping that the calm after the storm does not become the calm before the storm.
Protesters failed to show in large numbers. In Utah, only a handful of heavily armed pro-Trump demonstrators gathered outside the state house. In Michigan, too, the mood was a far cry from the scenes America witnessed only 11 days ago when a riotous mob stormed the U.S. Capitol.
I'm not expecting much to come out today. It's an off day. I'm still at work. I'm just wanting to see what happens with the MAGA movement. Make America great again.
One protester said that right-wing social media platforms had discouraged Trump supporters from turning up.
And a lot of people on there, especially on the right, were saying, not to go because they believe that there, A, could be violent attacks on the left, or B, that after the Capitol riot, they didn't want to be seen as, violent. So that's why a lot of them aren't out here today.
DW's William Glucroft is following the latest developments in this story. William, the U.S. was bracing for widespread protests by violent Trump supporters on Sunday. Those protests didn't happen, but that doesn't mean the danger has passed, does it?
No, Terry, it doesn't. Was bracing and is bracing. We should all be reminded that the FBI and other law enforcement officials are seeing a threat basically starting over the weekend and going through Inauguration Week, through at least Thursday, inauguration being on Wednesday, and possibly even beyond. Officials are looking at this as maybe two ways, perhaps because law enforcement officials now have their ears perked up after the January 6th violence at the Capitol. That might actually put any plans to rest that there may have been for inauguration. But the other scarier option is perhaps these threats will just be more diffuse, that they'll kind of simmer under the surface, that it'll be kind of a whack-a-mole as we approach Inauguration Day. Then maybe there won't be one big event like we saw at the Capitol last week, but maybe there'll be smaller events that will be harder to contain.
Well, the focus now is very much on that inauguration itself on Wednesday. 25,000 National Guard troops standing by in Washington, D.C. to deal with the possibility of violent mobs. But security officials are also apparently concerned about possible insider threats. What more can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. Those 25,000, that's more than double the normal National Guard presence for an inauguration. Defense officials speaking to Associated Press said they are worried about insider threats within those National Guard troops. Apparently, vetting is a very normal thing for the military to do for its troops, but the FBI is stepping in and doing additional vetting, and that's something very unique. We should be reminded that National Guard troops, they're so-called weekend warriors. They're just average members, men and women of the public who serve a bit of time in the military for the extra pay or to do some service to the country, and then they go back to their communities, their churches, their families. So it's really a reflection of everyone in America, and people who might be more prone to wanting to have access to military training. And we should be reminded what happened last week at the Capitol, that members of the military, retired and active, members of law enforcement, local politicians were involved in this mob violence. There's now investigations ongoing if there was insider help from Capitol Police or from even Congress people themselves. So the insider threat really is quite present.